Deborah, and welcome again to another wonderful episode of the Kingdom of Darkness, Spiritual Babylon, with your master teacher, your pastor, Pastor Deborah. We've been working through this big book that I wrote years and years ago, and I am slowly getting through it. It has many parts. But I had to learn my enemy well. I learned this by watching World War II movies and learned how we had to study as an ally the enemy of freedom. I learned you have to study what is holding you back, has you captured, is kidnapping you, killing you, oppressing you, capturing you, torturing you. I had to learn to look with eyes that I had not used very much, my spiritual eyes. I then had to write, study, read books, watched movies. And from all of that, after many, many years, this book called The Kingdom of Darkness, Spiritual Babylon, arose. It came after many years of studying under the teachings of Dr. Myles Munroe, who's now in heaven. He was from the Bahamas Faith Ministries. He was teaching on the kingdom of heaven and how humanity were ignorant kings. And we did not know about kingship, rulership, the kingdom, who we were, and what we were to do. Read all of his books, watched him from far away on a laptop. He was an excellent spiritual teacher, for he had lived in a colony of England when he was first born. He understood colonies, kings, queens. He understood changing a culture to look like its homeland. He understood rulership, governors, and that was his message. And he wrote about it. And I studied with him. I learned. And out from his teaching, this was one of the many books, The Kingdom of Darkness, Spiritual Babylon. Why did I write it? Because we have an enemy spiritually. He and his kingdom is here on earth. It is inside of us. Rules us, reigns us, kidnaps us, tortures us, causes us to walk crooked paths, have perverse thoughts and actions and deeds. He's desiring to rule this whole planet, nature, the resources, humanity. And he's been doing it for a long time. And through this, I had to study, because I was thrown into his kingdom to help set captives free, set prisoners free, spiritually, mentally, and physically. I had a big job to do. I had a powerful enemy to study, and his kingdom. And so I studied. I read the Authorized King James Bible. I wrote scriptures. I watched Bible movies, read true stories, watched bibliography movies, read bibliographies, true stories, studied more, looked around, saw the enemy everywhere. So here in this episode, number 31 of the Kingdom of Darkness, Spiritual Babylon, we're going to pick up in the section that's entitled, Who is the King of the Kingdom of Darkness? We were working through it, and I had shown you in the last video another picture of what Satan sort of looks like. This is another picture from Google Free Clip Art shows a fiery serpent, a dragon. And what we have to understand is he is quite able to change forms. But this is what his heart in him looks like most of the time. Fiery, evil, wicked, frightening. But he will take on a different shape and form to talk to you, to come through you. He hides in obscurity, sort of like Lord Sauron of the Lord of the Rings, the master who hides in fire and smoke. He hides. He does not want you to see him as he really is. But we have to study him. We have to learn about his heart, his mind. We have to understand his ways and his kingdom. So here in this video teaching for today, we're going to study more about who is the king of the kingdom of darkness. Darkness means ignorance, perverseness, confusion, bewitchment, and much more. Spiritual Babylon, the spiritual place of Babylon. Babylon, if you don't know, was the first town, city, where there was to be a big tower. It was called the Tower of Babel. And from there, it went into Babylon, a big kingdom. There is history. There was a real Babylon. So I use that. So here in this episode, number 31, we're going to talk about him, this guy right here. He has many names. It started off as Lucifer, son of the morning, son of the first age, offspring of a time. It was never the offspring or the son or the child or the heir of the kingdom of heaven or God the King. He was always to be a servant. He was what you'd call a high archangel. He was powerful in all of his ways. He's beautiful. We're going to hear about that. What was his job? He was a protector. He had the keys to hell, death, and the grave, even in his beautiful state, until they were taken away by a young man. And what happened was he was to guard the presence of God itself from any sin, perverseness. He was a protector, a guardian. Now, he didn't look like this. The best I can explain it is he had a body of jewels. And we're going to hear about that. And when the light, the voice, the music of the King of the kingdom of heaven spoke through him, he radiated out the glorious rays, the colors of the light. And that got perverted. We're going to hear about that. But right now, let's pray to get us going in this newest teaching, number 31, of the kingdom of darkness, spiritual Babylon, and who is the king. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time here in the Garden of Eden with everybody that you brought, and for all those who will be watching this years to come. We thank you, for you are our master teacher through your Holy Spirit. You can teach us through nature. You can teach us in dreams, circumstances. Father, we need teaching. We need to grow. We need understanding. We thank you for all the teachers and preachers and pastors, all the people who are trying to talk to us and teach us and tell us about the unseen world inside of ourselves and on this planet. Father, we thank you that you are working even now 24 hours a day. Through dreams and visions and circumstances, you are working. You are never silent, and you never sleep. And we thank you for that. And we hope that you will help us to understand the words that are being taught, that have been spoken out by you and written by others. We thank you for your teaching through the Holy Spirit, our Master Teacher. In the name of Christ Jesus, amen. All right, the title, what we say? Who is the King? In part number 31, we had finished up Isaiah 14, 12 through 20. And we had learned a lot about this guy and what was to happen to him and his condition. Go back and watch it, number 30. In this one, we're going to pick up a little bit more about who he was. So let's listen. Remember, this is a letter, sort of, a conversation that I, Pastor Deborah, was having with a young man who was living in the kingdom of darkness as Satan, the adversary of God's child. He was a servant of this thing. And I'm reaching out through knowledge, understanding, through this book. This young man is speaking right now. Wow, he sure got himself into a mess. Yes, he did, little one. But he started out so perfect and beautiful, didn't he? Yes. So let's listen to what he was in his beginning. We are going to go to Ezekiel 28, 12 through 19. Learn to read the Old Testament. Go slow. Look up every word. Study. Be diligent. Take notes. Write. Take notes. Study. Restudy. Look up words in a dictionary, a concordance, on the internet. Look at the history of nations, civilizations, kings, queens. Study. So here in Ezekiel 28, let's hear about him. Ezekiel was a prophet, a man who heard from God, who saw visions, would take spiritual trips, leave his body, and would travel with the Lord as a guide. The Lord wanted him to see some things, so he would write them down, and he could tell us. You sealed up the sum, Lucifer, that was his name. You were full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. This is his beginning. You had been in Eden. It means the presence of God, the very garden of God, his delight, the very spot where only a few could come. It was where there was an open door to God himself. Every precious stone was your covering, your body, so to speak. Humanity is still in awe of diamonds and rubies and sapphires, pearls, and the glorious riches that come out of the earth. They're beautiful to us. And this was Lucifer's body, his covering, his makeup. He was not dirt. He was not flesh. He was not an animal. He was a spiritual angel, a messenger, a high prince of an angel. Angel means messenger, servant. He was never created to be the son, the offspring of God in God's family. He was one of the servants of the family of the kingdom of heaven. He was one of the high servants that stood around the throne, and he was powerful. The sardines covered you, the topaz, and the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, and the carbuncle, and gold. Can you imagine what this looked like? Some of our jewelry designers show us how gold was used to hold jewels together, hold diamonds in place and rubies, in earrings, necklaces. We get a glimpse of this when we see beautiful evening gowns that women wear that has a lot of sparkles on it, jewels and pearls. And we all are in just awe at the beauty of these things put together. The workmanship of your tabourets. Tabourets means your musical instruments, your voice, which you would use to sing through. And of your pipes, your lungs, the wind that would come out of you, was prepared in you in the day you were created. When this young angel, this messenger, this high archangel, popped on the scene, he already had everything. He was a full-grown adult, full knowledge. He had no experience, but he had full knowledge, fully formed. He had the sum of everything that he was to have. It was already inside of him and sealed up. You are the anointed cherub that covers the presence of God. Had mighty wings, would protect the king, protect his word, his presence, protect his Holy Spirit probably, wherever he went. He was a servant. He was a guard, a bodyguard, so to speak. He was to protect and keep the presence of God, both in heaven and when it eventually came to earth in the Garden of Eden. He was a mighty protector. You'll see that a lot when you watch bodyguard movies about men or women who protected presidents, kings, children. They went with them 24 hours a day. They were always there. They knew the enemy, and they were there to protect the precious ones, who they were hired as a servant to protect. They had to take the back seat. They were not the one that people were looking at or listening to. They worked in the darkness, obscurity. Their job was to be unseen and unheard, but a powerful protector. And I, the Lord God, the King of heaven, the great I am and creator, have set you so. I created you to do this. This is your purpose, your function. You were upon the holy mountain of God. You could come up to the high places. You have walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. The stones of fire have a lot of connotations. It's the ones that are in the altar where smoke comes up, prayers. It's the birthplace. It's where the fire of God itself resonates out. You were perfect in your ways from the day that you were created until iniquity was found in you. Perverseness, wickedness, evilness. Something happened. his pure ways of serving, loving his king, desiring no glory for himself, became perverted. How did that happen? By the multitude of your merchandise, what I gave you, the things, the glory I gave you, the gifts, the powers, the anointing, everything that I gave you, your body, the beauty of your body, your pipes, your music, your sound, your wings. You were perfect in your ways of thinking, doing things. From the very day you were created until iniquity, something happened inside of this creature named Lucifer. I gave you a multitude of merchandise to use, to have gifts, blessings, to use talents. And they have filled the very middle, the center of you with violence. And you have sinned. What happened was Lucifer was around the king. He saw the glory that he was to pass on to him, the blessings. I just had this experience, just a couple weeks ago. Some people from Africa, I think it was, or India, wanted to give me praise and thanksgiving for praying for them. And I said right on LinkedIn, I will pass your prayers, your praises, your thanksgiving, your blessings on to the one who deserves it. And it's not me. I am his messenger. I could have kept those praises, and said, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And kept it all for myself to lift me up, to make myself feel good, to get a blessing from a human, to be the recipient of thank you. But right then and there, I knew, because I knew Lucifer's story. I wrote them and said, thank you, but I will pass these thankfulness on to the King of Heaven. He is the one. I am his messenger. I'm about his business. Point him towards him. I didn't keep it. This guy, he wanted it. He had a lot of autonomy and power and authority and dominion. And he didn't want to pass that on to the higher ups, to the king. So he started keeping some for himself. He trespassed the laws of the kingdom. He stole from the king what was rightfully the creator's: praise, thanksgiving, glory, honor, respect. He kept a little for himself. And it started twisting and perverting, and everything that was beautiful started changing. He was in his thoughts, just thinking to himself. But his heart, his mind was changing. He was stealing from his boss, embezzling from his boss, kidnapping, holding for his own praise, glory that belonged to somebody else. So this iniquity, this twisting, perverting of his thoughts, his heart, it was found in him. The great I Am looks at us. You could look inside and see if the heart, the mind, the thoughts of Lucifer were pure and holy, or had they become twisted. They had become twisted, perverted by the multitude of his merchandise, by the many of his gifts, his powers, authorities. These many different gifts I have given you, and these iniquities that have grown up inside of you. They have filled the midst of you with violence. And you have sinned, you have trespassed against me, the kingdom. You're a traitor, a treasonous traitor. You have now become violent against the peaceful kingdom of heaven. This is the King himself speaking. Lucifer's creator is talking to us. Therefore, I, the great I am, the King of the kingdom of heaven, your creator, Lucifer, I will cast you as profane. I will throw you out. You are evil, wicked, treacherous. Out of the mountain of God, out of the kingdom of heaven, out of my authority and dominion, out to the darkness, the wilderness, where there's no light, no truth. I, the great I am, the King of the kingdom of heaven, will destroy you. O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire, I will destroy you. Your heart was lifted up, became prideful because of your beauty. Each one of us will be tested because of our beauty, our ideas, our physical looks, how we lead and guide a nation, organizations, businesses, a family, and even ourselves. Our hearts can get lifted up in pride, just like Lucifer's. You have corrupted your wisdom by the reason of your brightness. When you hold a high place, it easily can corrupt the wisdom. That's the ability to know how to use the knowledge you have, your gifts, your talents. They can be corrupted by your brightness, by your own thoughts of how great you are, that you are the answer to a nation. You are the star on the walk of fame. You are the talented one. You are the most beautifulest one. I, says the great I am, the Lord, the King of heaven, will throw you to the ground. The earth had been formed by that time. It wasn't much. I don't think there was any life on it. Not sure of the timing of this one. I will lay you before kings. What? Well, what happened was humanity was going to come. And God is now prophesying to this creature, this Satan, this adversary of God. I'm going to throw you down there with them, down to the ground, to the earth, to the flesh. I'm going to lay you before kings. That's humanity. And that they may behold you and see you. We're supposed to know about him. We're supposed to see him in nature, the weather, the climate, business, in other people, in our words, our actions, our deeds, our policies, and in person. You want to see a great movie that'll help you? One is called The End of Days with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Another great movie is called The Last Rite, R-I-T-E, with Anthony Hopkins. It's about how a young Catholic priest didn't believe in this spiritual enemy in people. It was only mental health problems. He was sent to Rome to study under an elderly priest who cast out devils. And the young man learned, and he believed. Another one was The Exorcism of Emily Rose, a true story about a young girl who was having problems in college. She had been possessed by a demonic spirit from her ancestors, And they brought in a Catholic priest to do deliverance. It didn't go very well. And she ended up dying. And it's about the courtroom, the jury trial, the explanation of the story. Excellent, 3 excellent movies for you to watch that will help you. All true. The other one a lot of us have seen is The Exorcist. The true story is it was not a little girl which Linda Blair played. It was a little boy. And his grandmother, had been into witchcraft, the Ouija board, seances, and some things were passed to the grandchild. True story. It's out on the YouTube. You can read about it. And the priest who was the helper. And there's another story about that went before that, about the priest who was doing the casting out and how he had run into a particular demonic spirit over in Europe or Africa when he was an archaeologist. If you go looking, you will find true stories. They're out there. We have ways to learn that this guy, Satan, the adversary of God, and your adversary, is here on planet Earth. God goes on to Lucifer and says, you have defiled your sanctuaries. That means the places inside of you and what you were responsible for, the areas that I gave you to be over, to watch, to guard, to protect. By the multitude of your iniquities, by all the sinful things you have done, you have thought about inside, you're perverted inside with iniquity. By the iniquity of your traffic, by how much has come out of you, your words, your actions, your thoughts, what has happened on the inside of you has come out. And therefore, because of this, you are totally perverted now, both inside your thoughts, inside your body. Perverseness is coming out of your mouth, your actions. You're a thief, a robber, a kidnapper. And you knew the truth. And you knew the punishment. And yet, through pride, looking at your gifts and stealing from me, you became perverted, twisted, evil, wicked. Therefore, I, the great I am, the Lord of the kingdom of heaven, will bring forth a fire. That's why he's on fire, and we associate fire and dragons. From the midst of you. You can see that when you see dragons, and they spew out fire. In the Hobbit movies, we see it, the fire drake of the north. There's a lot about dragons in medieval times, fairy tales about dragons. There's even a nation here that has a dragon as their symbol of their nation. And this fire, this lust, eternal burning, that's why this guy is on fire and looks this way, that is now inside of him and has been brought forth. It's actually lust, unending, unsatisfying desires, just burning, desiring, lusting, wanting, full of jealousy, hate, because he can't get what he wants. So I will bring forth a fire from the midst of you, the middle. It shall devour you. And I will bring you to ashes upon the earth in the sight of them that behold you. Pastor Deborah can behold him, see him, knows him. And I had to see his fall when the cross occurred. I saw him fall when Israelites came out of Egypt. When love is abounding, peace. I see him in dreams. I've seen him personally in my home, walking down the hallway, looking for me. I've been to his meetings, his round table, his Illuminati meetings. Been to his towns. Been to his prison cells, his dungeons. I have beheld him, spoken to him, seen him in many different disguises and forms. All they, this means all of humanity, that know you among the people shall be astonished at you once you fall. They will go, this is the guy that has caused all this trouble. You shall be a terror for a while on earth. He is right now. And then never shall you be anymore. That's Ezekiel 28, 12 through 19. Lot to learn about Lucifer becoming Satan, about us, about future, about what happened to him. So we're beginning to understand who is the king of the kingdom of darkness? Satan, who was Lucifer. See, when you transform even to evil wickedness, your name changes, your purpose changes. But believe it or not, Satan's purpose is still guarding the presence of God. He does it well. When you come out of the womb, you are not yet born again. And he will keep your spirit from the presence of God. If you sin against God, if you know him, you are held captive by him. When you serve another God, something else, maybe the moon or a statue or a person or a government or a flag, something besides the great I am of the kingdom of heaven, then this guy is going to keep you away from him. He was given these keys of authority and dominion, but they were taken back by a young man named Christ Jesus. He passed those keys on to me to help free you, unlock your doors, so you can come into the presence of God. We learn later in the New Testament from Christ Jesus, a young little sort of whippersnapper, but he wasn't young. He was the eternal light of truth inside a dirt body. He even said to us in Luke 10:18 that I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven. This was seen in the spiritual kingdom of heaven. They all know what happened to Satan and 1/3 of the angels in heaven who were under his authority. The power was divided up between the 3 archangels. Michael had some, Gabriel had some, and Lucifer had some. And the great tail of Lucifer, which became a dragon's tail, swept 1/3 of the angels out of heaven with him when he fell. They all came to planet Earth, and we have to deal with them. But you can't deal with something like this unless you're educated and you have knowledge and you've studied them. Lucifer was created a spiritual being called a cherubim. He had a high place in God's kingdom, the kingdom of heaven. His job was to cover, protect, and to keep the presence of God in heaven safe and keep anything that was unholy, impure, away from the king. He was in the very presence of God himself. This is where he was created to live and work. He was anointed to perform the work that God designed him to do. He had great beauty and was in the very presence of the Most High, in the very throne room. He stood behind the throne, stood on the side, had power, authority. He knew God face to face. He was part of the heavenly government of the kingdom of God. But he started looking at himself and saw all of his beauty, his wisdom that was given to him. Even his beauty was given to him. His importance, his power and authority. You can forget that these are all gifts from somebody else. And he said to himself, "Look at me. I am so beautiful. I am so glorious. I am so wise. I have all the answers. I can guide the nation, the family. It's all about me. I'm the father, the business owner. I am so powerful. I am a God myself, indestructible. I am Lord. I am owner of everything." This is his thinking, his thoughts. And from there came his more thoughts. First, you have that thought about yourself. I got the answers. My way is going to solve the problems. I've been trained. I have been in politics for 45, 50 years. I know how this gets done. I'm the man. This is what I do. He goes, "Oh, because this is who I am. I got all this glory and beauty. I will ascend into heaven. I'll take the high seat. I'll become the president, the prime minister, the head of the company. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation. I will sit in the seat of the king, the throne, above everybody." And you'll see that in a lot of ancient historical dramas. See it a lot in Chinese dramas of ancient China with the kings and the emperors. See it in England and Europe, where the king sat in a chair, the throne, high above, up on the steps, above everybody. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation. I'm going to sit in authority over everybody. In the sides of the north, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I'm way up there beyond this earthly mess and flesh. I will be like the Most High. His desire was to be what the King of Heaven was. God, ruler, boss, the High King. That was his thoughts that he was having inside of him, his 5 wills. That's him. Yet you shall be brought down to hell, he's told, to the sides of the pit. Not a good place for this guy. God goes on and keeps telling us, they that see you shall narrowly look upon you, and consider you, saying, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms? See, he's going to be inside of a human. I believe he's going to eventually, this human going to control the whole world all by himself. The whole world will be the kingdom of darkness. Animals, weather, climate, people, creatures, businesses, politics, political systems, every nation, every resource. He wants it all. Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness? That means without God's light and love. And destroyed the cities thereof, destroyed the people, their thoughts, their ideas. You see that in war. Cities are being destroyed by bombs. That opened not the house of his prisoners. All the kings, humanity of the nations, even all of them, they will lie in their glory. Everyone in his own house. Even in death, he's saying, humanity will have a better grave, more honor and glory than this guy. But you are cast out of your grave, your resting place, like an abominable branch, and as the raiment of those that are slain. You're going to be thrown away, burned up, destroyed. You're not going to lie in glory and honor. And as the raiment of those that are slain, that are thrust through with the sword, you're going to be bloody, be destroyed. That go down to the stones of the pit, buried, hidden forever. And the carcasses are trodden underfoot. No more glory for you. We will walk on you as we walk on dirt. I want to end this teaching right here. And we're going to pick up again in number 32 and keep going a little deeper into who is the king of the kingdom of darkness. What his character was like before he fell. What he has now become. How did he get there? We have to study him. He is our spiritual enemy. He is here on planet Earth. He does get in human beings. He gets in animals. He's in nature. He has 1/3 of the angels of heaven serving under him. They are everywhere. We have heard about them through history, ancient history. They were called demons, devils, evil spirits. They are used in many different ways through humans. They have powers and authorities. They have voices and bodies. They are real. They are in the realm of the spirit that you cannot see with your natural eyes. But they are there. Many of them are inside of humanity, animals. When they're inside of humanity, they spew out their message, their concepts. They live their lives through us. They become one with us. And we see it in humanity's nature, their words, their actions, their deeds towards humanity, towards the earth. We don't see love, joy, and peace very much out in the world. So studying who the king is of the kingdom of darkness, spiritual Babylon, is important. Knowing about his kingdom, his authorities, his powers, why he is here, what does he do, what's his purpose, is of great value to you. We all see the issues that humanity has. We see the problems between nations, businesses. We see business owners mistreating their workers. We see sickness and death in animals, humanity, children born with defects, parents killing and abusing their own children. hurting animals. We see thieves and robbers, bad stuff. We see greed and lust, love of money more than love of humanity. We have to understand where all that comes from. Who's behind it? How do we change it? So by studying the source, Satan himself, who was Lucifer, I had to do this in order to help you the Lord's way. You don't get into this in mental health counseling. This is spiritual work. Many ancient believers used to know about him. But nowadays, it's superstition. It's just fun. It's not real. The Catholic Church still believes in it, that these creatures can inhabit a human being, and they perform exorcisms. But that's only after they've done medical testing, psychological testing, and they cannot find any answers for the behaviors, the words, and the thoughts, and the deeds of a human. They've had experience, and they know. So let's close out here before we go any further with prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for being with us and teaching us and helping us. Take us into a deep study of the kingdom of darkness and everything we need to know. Help us so we will not be ignorant of our enemy, that we will not be taken captive by ignorance. Help us to break free of the kingdom of darkness and come into the kingdom of light through your words of spirit and truth. Help us to come through the experience of the cross, that we may die to the old and be birthed into light and love. And we thank you for all the help you can give us in the name of Christ Jesus, the Son of the living God. And we'll see you next week or next time on the Kingdom of Darkness, Spiritual Babylon. Bye.